In today's video, we're going to be looking at the Growth Killer Expert Advisor by Mr. Pablo. So in full transparency, I actually had a chat with Pablo before making this video, but as per usual, I never take any sort of payment before making these, and I tell developers that I will always give my honest opinion, and he was very okay with that too, but just like to let the community know, just so everybody knows that we're on the same page. But I always find that if a developer reaches out to me for a chat, I like to be able to speak to them because it makes the review a lot better. I'm able to actually kind of hear their feedback and share that with the community in such a way that might come across a bit more easily than just by reading. So Pablo was the really famous developer of a bot called the Wall Street Killer. And the Wall Street Killer was super popular on the top of the MQL5 marketplace for months, because it was one of the few real trading strategies on the MQL5 marketplace, which was not a grid martingale. It was simply an opening range breakout scalper. And frankly, it was a very well designed one. It was a great bot. I made a few reviews on it. And during the pre-Trump Liberation Day era, it worked incredibly well. The issue with the opening range breakout on US 30, which was its primary trading style, is when the whole Liberation Day tariff madness happened, that strategy stopped working. Not just Pablo's, pretty much everywhere, it stopped working briefly for around a month or so, just because there were so many fake outs at the open. And this was simply because there was just crazy volatility. And even during the Liberation Day time, sometimes the brokers would widen spreads, like 3x, 4x. I remember when I see markets on some days 10x their spreads. And if you were trading more of a scalping style opening range breakout, it just wouldn't work, right? So that was around the time where Wall Street Killer went from being one of the most hyped bots to maybe being a little bit less hyped because people are like, oh my God, what's happening? It still was an amazing bot. I think it was very, very good. It's just what happens is that with any sort of bot, unfortunately, market regimes can change. Like you can have Donald Trump announcing kind of record-breaking tariffs, and you can't really take that into account in a back test, right? So when this regime shifts, you have to recognize kind of more fundamentally, okay, maybe it's not the best time to run more of a scalper, and let's maybe swap it out. But fundamentally, I think Wall Street Killer would probably do very well again now. It was just that brief moment in time where we had this crazy volatility where it was a bit more challenging. So talking to Pablo, we both had bots which traded a very similar style around this time, but he really developed this bot here to kind of address some of those points. So now let's go through that in detail. So going for the sales page here, one thing that really stands out is that this is meant to be used for creating your own custom strategy along with some of the different set files that Pablo provides. So by default, this is running a strategy on gold, but with speaking to him, he's meant to be doing something almost like the Ultimate Breakout System by WIM, or almost like Titan X by Blue Edge Financial, where essentially you build a bot that has a bunch of different indicators and strategies and money management techniques built in, so that if you're so inclined, you can essentially choose to turn different settings on or off. And then you as a developer, similar to what Faircount's doing with Volume Hedger, you would give set files to people so they can then decide and use different settings based on the EA's kind of different indicators and different trading styles. So that's what this one is really meant to be. It's meant to be more of a portfolio management tool where you can potentially run 20 strategies in this bot instead of just being based purely on one strategy. And the reason why developers do that, and the reason why many of us, myself included, prefer to sell portfolios is to the point of the Wall Street Killer earlier, where unfortunately no bot is always going to always be profitable in every single market regime. It's better to run many different strategies so you can kind of smooth out those months where one particular strategy doesn't do as well. And that's really Pablo's intent here, to give you something which can run 20 different styles, 30 different styles, and really give you that diversified portfolio, which I think is quite smart, seeing as I do it myself too, because frankly, this is what gives you the best edge in trading. Diversification is the closest thing to a free lunch which you will get in trading. And really here he goes through in detail regarding the different settings, but the main thing is that he's added the option to have a grid. So personally, I'm not a huge grid fan, but some people love grids and have great results with grids. It gives you a lot of consistency. So he's giving people the option of using a grid or not. By default, it's also running on gold using, I believe, a hard-coded time frame, so you're not time frame specific. And by default, it's also using the recovery mode and grid. So there are a few different options here. You can also see that you can specify the grid size. You can specify if you want to use a market order or pending order. You can specify the exact money management if you want to close positions quickly, and even some risk management settings and some prop firm settings like max drawdown. So frankly, to my earlier point, it gives you the optionality to run a whole bunch of different types of strategies. I believe by default he's running the gold setting right here, and we're going to take a look at that now. However, speaking to him, I think he's planning on giving people a whole kind of basket of set files to run on different assets and essentially use this as a tool to really generate many different strategies, which makes sense to me. So now to pull up MT5, the default on gold is indeed a grid. So to kind of go back here, we can look at it. I ran it on the H1. You can tell that we are indeed taking grid positions, some which are long, some which are short. That means that the entry trigger is probably some sort of mean reverting oscillator. That would be my guess. You can see that, yes, indeed, we are taking lots of grids. Something that I noticed is I don't think he's using a martingale, because if we look at the actual trades, we can see that there isn't tremendous amounts of scaling. I guess there's some scaling. Let's look here, for instance, closing at a similar time. Yeah, these would have all closed at the same time. Okay, so we do see some scaling, but it's not it's going from 0.12 to 0.5, so there is some lot scaling, but it's not like a literal exponential doubling. But there is some recovery here, and there is some grid being used. Because I noticed up here, for instance, it was a bit more consistent. And then I guess at a certain amount, he is starting to use more of a recovery setting. And that would involve having a higher lot size as the price goes against you. But once again, in speaking to him, this is just the setting which you can turn on or off. So if you want to use more of a recovery-based grid, it's your prerogative to do so. However, if you're not using a recovery-based grid, I'm sure there's other ways that you can kind of play with that. So here's an example, for instance, of this past, I believe, Thursday. Yes, this Thursday. And here would have been quite a big grid, because this is when we had just this massive drop on gold intraday. And there we can see we had a bit of a more sizable drawdown, but it did recover because ultimately price did mean revert. One thing to note is that this would be a more aggressive setting. Anytime you're running a grid more on gold, you do have to be careful and just control your max drawdown. But I believe that there is the optionality to do that. Grid setting, enable grid setting. You can, for instance, here we go. So you can set the maximum amount of orders, grid stop loss, grid take profit, grid partial close, use money management. So he's giving you a whole bunch of different ways to effectively manage your grid risk. So maximum grid levels, perfect, okay. So what you should be mindful of is if you want to use grids, there can very well be a good use for it. Many good bots are based on grids, but you have to be mindful of the risk management and just do the math. Determine what your max potential exposure can be, determine how much you could potentially go into drawdown, and then be comfortable with that, as well as maybe play with some of the settings to reduce your risk. So I would ask Pablo, for instance, hey, if I want to run this on a prop firm or on my personal account, I never want to have a drawdown, or I never want to have a loss which is greater than 10%, you could probably ask him to give you some settings there. So that's quite neat. He also has the option to turn on custom mode, where it goes from the basic XAU USD strategy and then kind of goes to a mode in which you as the user can further customize it. I think that makes sense. But really, I think this is a good canvas to develop strategies on. Pablo's a good trader. He knows what he's doing. There is a nice amount of different features here between stop losses, between indicators, between money management features, in which that you can probably modify and play with to develop a whole basket of strategies. His base one here is a bit more of an aggressive one, so you have to be careful with your risk management, but I'm sure he's going to come out with a whole bunch of set files which are probably more conservative in the coming days, and I'm sure you can probably ask him for one before buying the bot anyway. So yes, my conclusion is that this is a great canvas in order to make bots for yourself. At $159 or $149, I think It's very cheaply priced for what it is, because it is somebody who knows how to make bots and has put in the right features effectively to help people go and develop a whole portfolio. So either, if I were to buy it, I would probably ask Pablo for a few more set files just to see like, how could I really put this portfolio approach into practice? But from a core concept, if you like the ultimate time bomb, that's my bot. If you like the ultimate breakout system from Whim, or some of our ultimate time bomb bots with multiple set files, and you like that style of effectively having a bot which is a good canvas, which can then be customized, this could be something for you. So guys, hope you enjoyed my video, and I will see you in the next one.